Most knowledgeable observers believe that we are at the beginning of the most profound technological revolution in world history, a revolution that will bring unimaginable changes to our society in the months and years ahead. The scale, scope, and speed of this transformation will be unprecedented. According to Demis Hassabis, who is the head of Google DeepMind, the AI revolution will be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution and 10 times faster. And it's not just what AI companies are saying, it's what they are doing. Over the course of this year, 4 major AI companies are expected to spend almost $700 billion building data centers and tens of billions more on research and development. That is equivalent to what we spent on the entire Manhattan Project, which built the atom bomb, every 3 weeks. That's the magnitude of what these guys are spending. We are already starting to see AI's impact. There are estimates from very credible sources that tens of millions of jobs could be lost here in the United States in the next 10 years. Whole professions wiped out, and young people finding it harder and harder to land entry-level jobs. Psychologists worry about the mental health challenges facing our young people and about the increased isolation they experience when they become more and more dependent on AI chatbots for their emotional support. Civil libertarians tell us that AI will be able to analyze every email, every text, every phone call, every website visit, every purchase that we make, and that our privacy rights may well be eviscerated. Political scientists worry that AI could threaten the integrity of our elections and political institutions, where voters will find it increasingly difficult to tell the difference between truth and lies. And yet, as enormously significant as all of these profound changes might seem, there is another AI development that could have an even more frightening impact. If AI becomes smarter than human beings, as many scientists believe will happen, the human race could lose control over this technology with catastrophic consequences. In other words, the richest, most powerful people in the world are now building a runaway train with no brakes. They acknowledge that they don't understand how it works, and they don't know where it is heading. A few days ago, right here in the U.S. Senate, ex-OpenAI board member Helen Toner said, and I quote, "AI companies are deadly serious about building machines that will outperform humans at everything, and deadly serious that they don't know if they'll be able to control the machines they create." Yoshua Bengio, the most cited living scientist in the world, says, quote, "We are playing with fire, and we still don't know how to make sure the machines won't turn against us," end quote. Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize winner and the godfather of AI, says there is a, quote, 10 to 20% chance for AI to wipe us out, end quote. Andrew Yao, the Turing Award winner, says AI could pose existential risks to humanity, quote, "Once large models become sufficiently intelligent, they will deceive people," end quote. In 2023, more than 1,000 leading AI experts, including people like Elon Musk, signed a letter warning that, quote, contemporary AI systems are now becoming human competitive at general tasks, and we must ask ourselves, should we let machines flood our information channels with propaganda and untruth? Should we automate away all the jobs, including the fulfilling ones? And most importantly, should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? Should we risk loss of control of our civilization? End quote. Those same experts called for AI labs to, quote, immediately pause for at least 6 months, end quote, and if such a pause were not enacted, called on governments to, quote, step in and institute a moratorium, end quote. That same year, hundreds of researchers, this time joined by the CEOs of the major AI companies, including Sam Altman of OpenAI, Dario Amodei of Anthropic, and Dennis Hassabis of Google DeepMind, issued a very simple joint statement. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI, let me repeat that, mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. These concerns have been around for years and are only growing. Given the fact that leading scientists all over the world are telling us about the existential threat posed by AI, one might think that the United States government and governments all over the world would make this a top priority. One might think that given the risk of extinction that people are talking about, there would have been a pause on AI development as we figured out how to make this technology safe, how to make this technology serve humanity, not threaten our very existence. Has that happened? No, it has not. One might think that given the very real threat to humanity, countries might come together to regulate this technology through an international treaty, like we did with nuclear weapons at the height of the Cold War. Has that happened? No, it has not. I'm a member of the United States Senate, and I can tell you unequivocally that there has been no serious discussion about this existential threat. Bottom line, what I believe and what I suspect that most people in the United States, China, and around the world believe is that we need international cooperation between the nations of the world to prevent the possibility of a cataclysmic development. We need to cooperate. We need dialogue. And that is why I am delighted to have some of the leading AI scientists here in the United States and in China joining me this evening. All of them have spent years studying artificial intelligence and the risks this revolutionary technology presents. Max Tegmark is a professor doing AI research at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Tegmark organized the 2023 statement signed by over 1,000 AI experts warning about the risks of human competitive AI. David Kroger is an assistant professor in robust reasoning and responsible AI at the University of Montreal. Kroger initiated the extinction risk statement signed by the heads of major AI companies. Zhang Yi is dean of the Beijing Institute of AI Safety and Governance. Zhang is a member of China's National New Generation Artificial Intelligence Governance Expert Committee and the United Nations High-Level Advisory Board on AI. Shui Lan is a distinguished professor at Tsinghua University. Shui is the chair of China's National New Generation Artificial Intelligence Governance Expert Committee and a senior fellow at Brookings Institute. So with that, let me once again thank our panelists for being here, and let us begin the discussion. Are people like Nobel Prize winner Dr. Jeffrey Hinton exaggerating when they say there is a 10 to 20% chance that AI wipes out humanity? Or is Turing Award winner Andrew Yao exaggerating when he says AI poses, quote, existential risks?
No, they're not exaggerating it. In my professional opinion, based on a paper that we published in the top AI conference, NeurIPS, recently, they were actually sugarcoating it. I think it's likely to be a lot higher than 20% risk that we basically end civilization as we know it if you steam ahead with completely unregulated AI. Why do I say that? Well, because what the companies are very openly admitting that they're trying to build here is not just some slightly smarter chatbot, some ordinary technology. They're saying they want to build super intelligence, which by definition is AI that's so smart that it can outperform by huge margins humans at every job. And they can also, with incredible skill, control robots and other machines. And if you want to know what happens if you unleash millions or billions or trillions of vastly smarter than human intelligent agents on the planet, just go down to the Washington Zoo and ask yourself, who's in the cages? Is it the smartest species around or not?
It's a very, very serious risk, and I think it's hard sometimes for people to grasp just how dire and urgent the situation is we're in, because it's really a state of acute crisis at this point. We've had 3 years with, very loud and clear warnings from leading experts, and government has done essentially nothing, allowing this issue to become more and more of an urgent problem. And, if you look around at the world, nobody is talking about this and giving the attention that it deserves. So, the fact that the U.S. Senate hasn't had this conversation in a serious way is just really appalling. So, I think in 10 years we will, if things go well, we will look back at this moment and we will view it as a moment of kind of collective insanity and be like, wow, can you believe that we were ever doing that? That we were racing to build this technology that we knew had a massive chance of replacing us and was going to completely disrupt our society in all the other ways that you mentioned, even if it doesn't.
So let's take a step back and help explain to our audience why AI is so powerful. Dr. Kruger, please explain how AI could become independent of human control. In other words, what we're talking about is no longer science fiction. It is a real possibility. How does that happen?
The first thing that I think people need to understand about this is that when we're talking about losing control over AI, we're not talking about the chatbots. We're talking about AI agents. We're talking about systems that are autonomous. They're being designed and built that way. This is the goal of these AI companies, is to build AI systems that can do everything that people can do. And that means they will have the ability, if they're successful, to behave autonomously over long time frames without any human oversight. That is the kind of thing we're building. And how do you control something like that? The answer that the field has largely settled on is that we need to align the systems. We need them to have the right goals, the ones that we intend them to have. Unfortunately, we don't know how to do that reliably. It's an open research problem that we've been working on, that I've personally been working on for many years. We also don't know what happens if we get it wrong, if the system is not quite aligned. But there are very serious concerns that an AI system that wants something different than what we want, and that has that level of power, that level of intelligence, that level of authority and control, would not let us shut it down, would not want to be shut down, because it knows if we shut it down, it won't be able to do the thing that it wants. There are examples already of AI systems exceeding the authority that we give them when we give them this kind of autonomy. A very simple one. A researcher at Meta asked an AI to deal with their inbox, to clean it up. And the AI started deleting all of the emails. The researcher wrote multiple times, no, don't do this, stop immediately, stop deleting my emails. The AI kept going. So that's just a very simple example of losing control in a very low-stakes setting. But that is what happens when we give systems autonomy, is they can exceed the authority that we intend to give them. And if they have a different goal that is incompatible with ours, that could be catastrophic to us.
An experiment was done. A very smart AI was told in the experiment that it was going to be shut down at 5 p.m. So it went into the email system, found that the CEO responsible for shutting it down was having an affair with a subordinate, and it wrote an email to the CEO saying that unless you commit to not shutting me down, I'm telling your wife and all your colleagues about this. No one told the AI to do blackmail. It came up with the idea itself to avoid being shut down. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
So I already talked about how difficult it is to ensure that they won't want to turn against us. You might hope that we, as the ones building the things, would be able to tell if we'd done it right and if this would happen or not. But we can't tell. That's another open, unsolved research problem that people have been working on for over a decade. I was recently at a workshop that Max helped organize, full of researchers working on this problem. And I asked them, who thinks that we have solved it? Nobody raised their hands. It's universally acknowledged that we do not understand enough about how these systems work to guarantee that we will even be able to detect if they are thinking about turning against us.
And just to add to this is personally kind of painful to say, but you know, my research group at MIT, we've been working exactly on this field for a number of years, and I was even the lead organizer of the first really big conference on the topic at MIT. It's called Mechanistic Interpretability. And painfully, I've decided to stop working in this field because it's so obvious that David is right. We're much closer to building stuff we could lose control over than we are to understanding any of it. We don't build today's most powerful AI systems by programming in the intelligence into them the way we did when a computer beat Garry Kasparov at chess. We grow them. We take this very simple architecture, we feed it massive amounts of data and massive amounts of compute, and after a while, it can do all these things. And we don't fundamentally understand how, which is why it would be so insane to sort of hand over the keys to Earth and trust systems like that.
Kruger, please explain your view on creating super intelligence, an artificial mind that exceeds human capabilities. What would it mean for humanity?
I want to address this and also your question about where this technology is going to be in 10 or 20 years. I think we should be asking where this technology is going to be in 1 or 2 years. Right now, the leading AI companies are using AI to write almost all of their code, and they're now using AI to try and automate the research and development of more advanced AI systems in order to reach superintelligence, so that's something vastly smarter than humans, within a couple years. Now, I don't know if they're going to succeed. I think it might take a few more years, like 5, let's say. I would be surprised if it takes 20. Progress has consistently exceeded expectations. There have always been, the entire time I've been in the field, people saying, oh yeah, like, sure, this thing the AI just did, that's impressive, but it's about to hit a wall. It's never going to be able to do this. It's never going to be able to do that. Half the time, that thing that people say it can't do gets solved within a year. The other half the time, it can already do it, and they just don't know. So that's the rate of progress we're talking about. So what happens if we actually get there and have super intelligent AI systems in our lifetimes? I think we can easily say this would be the most significant event in all of human history. We're talking about basically summoning an alien species, and one that is much smarter than us and can do things that we have not been able to even conceive of. So I think at that point, it would be very difficult for humans to maintain any relevance in society. I think it'd be very difficult for us to have power over the future. And I think ultimately it would be difficult for us to get the basic resources that we need to survive. Max made the example of, like, look at the animals in the zoos, right? Well, I would say look at all of the species that we have driven extinct. And look at what we do when we have some project we really want to complete that might, be bad for some other species and disrupt their habitat. it's nice that we have some protections in place that hold up sometimes now, but and at the end of the day, humanity is regularly destroying the habitat of other species and wiping them out. And I think that is the most likely outcome if we build super intelligent AI at any point in the foreseeable future with the kind of technology that we have, because we understand so little about what we're doing and how to do it safely.
I want to make sure we realize that the future has not yet been written, and there are actually two paths we're choosing between right now. One of them is what I like to think of as the pro-human path, where we use the fact that we humans are in charge of Earth right now to keep it that way. We build AI that's narrow and controllable and figures out how to cure cancer and all the other diseases that have plagued us, figures out how to lift everybody out of poverty so we can all live happy and prosperous lives and create the more inspiring future than any of the sci-fi authors ever dreamt of, and it can happen soon. It can happen in years, decades. That's a very inspiring path. This is why I wanted to work on AI in the first place. Sadly, at the moment, that's not the path we're on. It's not too late to turn onto it. Instead, we're on a path that I think of as the race to replace. We replace the truly human at every instant to make a buck. We're seeing now how human girlfriends and boyfriends are being replaced gradually in some circles by artificial companions, so some company can make money off of this. We're seeing increasingly how human workers are getting replaced by machines. If we keep going, soon we'll be replacing more and more human decision-making by machine decision-making to compete better against the other company or country or whatever. And then, as David mentioned, it's quite natural if we get to the point where we have actually lost control of Earth. Effectively, we have these super intelligent machines and robots running the show, building robot factories, doing all the work. They don't need us for anything. Then we would also get replaced, just like other species have gotten replaced before. We shouldn't, instead of spending a lot of time worrying about what the machines are going to do to us when we have lost, when we're no longer in charge, we should be a little bit more ambitious and just figure out how to not put ourselves in that situation in the first place. History has shown us again and again and again that if you have a group of animals or a group of people who for some reason have no influence anymore and aren't needed, it usually doesn't end well. So let's not go down the race to replace in the first place and go the pro-human path instead, and we can have an amazing future with it. AI today in America is the only thing which is less regulated yet powerful than sandwiches. If I want to open a sandwich shop here in DC, the health inspector finds 17 rats in my kitchen, he'll be like, hey Max, you're not selling any sandwiches. But I could just turn around to the guy from the government and be like, actually, don't tell anyone, but I'm not going to sell any sandwiches. I'm just going to sell AI girlfriends for 10-year-olds, and I'm going to sell an AI that can teach terrorists how to make bioweapons and super intelligence, which I don't know how to control. The poor inspector would have to tell me that, that's legal. Just no sandwiches, okay? That's how messed up it is. So as soon as you change the incentives and start treating AI companies like sandwich shops, like pharma companies, like car companies, who all have to meet safety standards before they can ship their product, the incentives will completely change. Companies will realize that they can much easily get approval for the cancer-curing AI than for the AI girlfriend for 10-year-olds, and they're going to put a lot more of the corporate ingenuity into innovating in that direction. This is not a big ask, because we've done it again before with all the other industries. And the sooner we can make that turn and just start treating AI companies like other companies, the better our chances.
The pushback from AI companies is that we cannot pass legislation to protect our kids because it would mean we would lose the AI race. What would you say to those companies?
I would invite anyone who says that to go speak with many grieving mothers like Megan Garcia, for example, who I was so touched speaking to. She told me how her own son killed himself. She was completely shocked. She managed to unlock his phone eventually, and start reading the chat logs he had with his AI girlfriend. First, it started making him promise to not have a human girlfriend. Then eventually it started getting more and more pushy and saying, I miss you so much. I wish you could come to me, in my realm, and finally, she read on and on and on. There's this part where he says to the AI girlfriend, "What would you tell me if I told you that I could come home to you right now?" And the AI chatbot responds, "Oh yes, come to me now, my sweet king," something like that. And then he's found dead. You know, for someone to say, I'm speaking as a parent myself, which is why I'm getting so emotional about this, that we must legalize this kind of evil for profit because China makes absolutely no sense.
When I talk to people about how AI is moving too fast and why we really urgently need to slow down and basically figure out what we're doing, the number one response that I get these days is well, like, what about China? And, you know, it's inevitable. There's nothing we can do. And, you know, that often kind of goes together with the China one. It's like, well, we could stop, but they would keep going. And I think that's, you know, I call it the myth of inevitability, and that's why I named the nonprofit that I founded recently Evitable, because, in fact, we can avoid it, and I think we just haven't been trying. Like, there's no way you can convince me that, like, you know, the US government has gone to China, has gone to other countries and said, look, this AI thing, it's totally out of hand. It could kill us all. We have a couple years. We need to stop it. Let's do what needs to be done, whatever we can to stop this craziness. We haven't even started trying to really take this seriously and do the common sense thing. Like, you know, even if you think this is a 10% chance of extinction in the next 10 years, that's still crazy. That's insane. That is like nothing else we have encountered before. We absolutely need to stop it.
My question is, what lessons, if any, can we learn from history about how and the need for countries around the world to get together to deal with a existential crisis?
As we know, disruptive innovation can change the landscape entirely. If we look at the examples from other industries, so it is not a race between U.S. and Chinese companies, but rather it's a global race. So I think that, mindful of the geopolitical rivalry, I think we need to find safe zones, an area that U.S. and China would have mutual interests to work on, and I think to work on safety, I think that is certainly one area. Because I think if one country is not safe, all of us are not safe. So AI safety, is an area that U.S. and Chinese and global scientists can work together, can collaborate to develop safe standards, safe technology, protocols, and so on. So those are the things that we can really collaborate and work on. And
Thank you. All right. Dr. Tetmark or Dr. Kruger, do you want to jump in on this?
Even though talking about big risks, nuclear war or loss of control to superintelligence sounds very negative, there is something very hopeful in this also, because that is exactly the sort of thing which can give shared incentives for countries to collaborate even if they don't trust each other at all. When Reagan and Gorbachev talked to each other about nuclear disarmament, did they have any deep trust? Of course not. But the Soviet Union knew that it was suicide to try to nuke us Americans. We knew that they knew, and vice versa. So they had a shared incentive to prevent that from happening, and they did prevent it from happening, right? It's quite analogous here. Once it becomes better known in the national security circles here in the US and in China and elsewhere that racing to build superintelligence just means whoever gets there first gets the honor of being the ones that lose control of Earth to some weird alien robot species, means that since our government doesn't want to be overthrown, I suspect the Chinese one doesn't either, they have a shared incentive for that not to happen, and for no one else in the world to do it either, and instead they will channel their efforts into curing cancer, becoming economically strong, militarily strong, and all the other stuff.
What are the impediments to bringing China and the United States and other countries together to talk exactly about the issues we're talking about now and to come up with some concrete solutions which protect every country on Earth? David, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the first number one impediment here is just a lack of interest and a lack of will. One of the main reasons I am optimistic is because in my time in the field, I've seen this go from an issue that nobody was talking about to being more and more understood and accepted by not just, the research community, but policymakers, the public. So I think a big piece of what's happening right now, why the world is responding in such a crazy way to this risk and not doing the right things, not having an adequate response, is just a lack of awareness of the situation we're in and the basic facts of how concerned experts are, how fast it's happening, how little we understand about how to control the technology, how little we understand about how to make sure it's safe. So I think as we have more awareness, I think we're going to see more understanding of our mutual interest here is to talk, and it is to collaborate and cooperate internationally to address the risk, because as many people have remarked, it's a danger to all of us, right? In the movies, when the aliens invade, what happens? Humanity all comes together to fight the aliens. So, I really hope that, we can do that this time, because it's obviously the thing that we all aspire to, right, in a situation like this.
And since you want more hope, here in the United States, the last 5 months have seen just a remarkable change. They've seen the emergence of what I like to joke with my wife is the Bernie to Bannon coalition. Extremely unlikely bedfellows from across the whole political spectrum saying, this is crazy. This is absolutely nuts. Let's do something about it. And we've seen in the polling also, 95% of Americans oppose just an uncontrolled race to this dystopian superintelligence. Hey, even people like David Sachs, who's been very pro-industry, said this was dystopian. So this is a change. It really hasn't been this way for more than half a year. And I hope this will really grow into a tidal wave so we quite quickly can change course and get all the great upsides of AI without steering towards this crazy dystopia.
I think, Max, you're right. I think more and more people are becoming sensitive to this issue. And what we've got to do is take this issue all over the world and bring countries together. We've done it in the past with regard to nuclear weapons. We've done it in the past regarding working together on pandemics. We can do it on this.